this thing on? Because it's getting ready to be on.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Bell Ringer. My name is Greg. Your guest name today is John Scannell, the CEO of Moog, a huge company with thousands of employees all over the globe, based right here in the Buffalo, Niagara region. They're a major employer here and a great corporate citizen. John and I talk about the reasons why Moog was able to succeed here in Buffalo and beyond. And he brings a really cool kind of global perspective to the conversation of what Buffalo should do next. So thanks to him for his time and for yours in listening. For those that don't know, what is Moog?
So Moog is a public company. We were founded in 1951, so 70 years ago, by a gentleman by the name of Bill Moog. There's actually people, when they hear the name, at least for those of us that are a little bit older, there was a synthesizer that was developed back in the 60s and 70s, which was very famous, and it was called the Moog synthesizer. It was the first real music synthesizers. I think it was used on the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's album, although I'm not sure. Anyway, a lot of older folks say, oh, you're the synthesizer company. And it turns out we're not. We have nothing to do with those folks. So that's the disclaimer. So we're about a $3 billion company headquartered in New York. Bill Moog founded the business here. And our area of focus is on high-end motion and fluid control systems. And the way the company got started is that back in World War II, naval ships had anti-aircraft guns. And the purpose of an anti-aircraft gun was if there was an incoming airplane shooting at the ship, you would fire at it and hopefully you damage it and it would fly off and it would fall into the sea. But it turned out that anti-aircraft guns had no value against kamikaze pilots, because even if you damaged the airplane, you couldn't take it out of its flight trajectory and it would crash into the ship and you'd lose the ship. So after World War II, there was a big effort to develop what was called a surface-to-air missile that you could fire at the incoming airplane and it would blow it out of the sky. And one of the big challenges with a missile like that is, how do you steer the missile? You have fins at the back and you got to move them very quickly. And so one of the things that was required was high-speed steering. And Bill Moog worked for Cornell Labs at the time, which was based in Buffalo. And he developed a hydraulic servo valve, which was used to steer the fins. And that's how the company started. Cornell Labs did not want to commercialize it. Bill said, can I take it and start a little company? And he started a tiny little company out here in East Aurora. And that's where we're still headquartered today. And we've taken that technology and we now apply it in lots of different markets: defense, space, industrial, medical. And an example, in 1969, when the Apollo rocket went to the moon, there were 3 different stages in the rocket. And when you have a rocket, you have to control the motion of the rocket by adjusting the base of the rocket, what they call the aft skirt. And so the 3 stages had controls for essentially steering the rocket. And Moog here in East Aurora made all the actuators for all 3 stages that put men on the moon. And we still do stuff on the International Space Station. We'll be on the next NASA launch to the moon. So we do stuff that is very, very difficult to do. It's incredibly high precision. And it's a credit to the engineering team here and elsewhere around the world that does it. So that's what we do. It's a really exciting place to be. And if you're an engineer, Moog is by far the best thing to do in Western New York.
So, take that fascinating technology and that origin story, fast forward it to today. Obviously, you're a global company, you mentioned, based here in Western New York. Give people a sense of the scale, how many employees in Western New York, maybe across the globe, things like that, so people can kind of understand the breadth of Moog's reach.
So worldwide, we have about 13,000 employees, about $3 billion in sales. We're in about 26 different countries. Within the US, about half of our staff is in the US and half that is outside of the US. If I look at the big facilities outside of the US, we have a large facility with about 1,000 people in the Philippines. We have large operations in the UK. We've got several facilities there with over 1,000 people, about 1,000 people in Germany. And then we have facilities in China, Japan, India, Singapore, Hong Kong, the Netherlands, Italy, Spain, France, lots and lots of different places. So that's our size. And then in the States, we probably have about 20 plus facilities around in various parts of the States, some larger, some smaller. And here in Western New York, where we're headquartered, we have almost 4,000 people. So we have a very big operation here. We're based on a campus out in East Aurora. We have 300 acres. It's an absolutely beautiful campus. We have walking trails for our employees around the campus. Obviously not in today's weather, but in the nice weather, folks will go out walking around lunchtime. And if you walk around the whole, you kind of get, there's a loop around the entire campus. It's a 3-point-something mile loop. It's actually about a 5K. If you wanted to do a 5-kilometer run, you just have to run around our campus. So it's absolutely gorgeous. But about 4,000 people, probably close to half of those would be engineers of various types. But we also do have production. We've got machine shops, we've got assembly and test. And most of what we make here is either used for the space business, for satellites or launch vehicles, or else on various types of military aircraft. That's the largest part. But we also do some industrial work here in East Aurora.
So the company started here in Western New York and has reached the scale that you just mentioned. In your eyes, as the leader of this company and a leader of advanced manufacturing in Western New York, what do you think are the benefits of doing business in Buffalo, Niagara?
So a couple of things. First of all, because we started here, this is where the company is headquartered, and so we've built here. If we hadn't started here, would we have automatically come here? I don't know, but we have built here and we've continued to invest here. And even over the years, as we have also set up production facilities in other parts of the world, we've constantly continued to invest in Western New York. And just last year, we opened a brand new building. We spent over $40 million on a new investment here, and we continue to make significant investments here. In terms of the workforce and the capabilities that you have, one of the things I think that you have in Western New York is, to some extent, a little bit like, Greg, you described yourself. You have a little bit of a captive audience, in that there's a lot of folks who want to be here because they're from here. I'm the only one that I know of, because my wife is Irish as well, I'm Irish, who doesn't have some relation or pull to the area. Every time I meet somebody at Moog and they say they're originally from, pick it, California or Denver or anywhere, and they've moved to Buffalo, I say, well, do you have a friend or a partner or a significant other who's from Buffalo? And they say, oh yeah, I've got, or I went to school here and I stayed here. So if you're here, it's wonderful. I think it's a wonderful place to bring up children. The cost of living is very affordable. We don't have the traffic problems that you have in the big cities. And if you can get a job with a company like Moog, if you're an engineer and you're looking for really exciting engineering work, you don't have to be in Silicon Valley. What we do is the very leading edge of the types of, in the areas that we're involved in. We make the absolute best stuff in the world. So there's this wonderful opportunity with the talent that wants to be here to take advantage of that. And I think if we were in Boston or, in Silicon Valley or someplace, you have this competition for talent with all of these other companies, which drives costs up, which drives the cost of living up, which drives people, and they jump around. And so by being here and really investing for the long term here, I think we have the advantage that there is wonderful talent here, like there is in most places. And you just have to tap into that talent and then give people a really interesting job and a really interesting thing to do. And one of the things that we do at Moog, one of our mottos is we want to be a great place to work. We actually want to be hopefully the best place that anybody has ever worked, that when they come, they'll stay. And so a lot of the people here particularly, but most of our facilities around the world, have spent a very long time with the company, because when they join because of the interesting technology, and then they stay because interesting jobs and the culture of the company is all about working together, confidence, trust in each other, and doing really neat things. And so most people stay for a very long time, and that's wonderful. So you have this stability in the workforce as well. So I think all of those are reasons. It is less expensive here than it is in California. Obviously, that's a good thing. But it is a question of taking advantage of those folks who want to be here, rather than trying to get folks coming from other parts of the country. Every now and again, we've gone out and we've done a search for maybe a very specific capability. And if we get folks that are coming from, it doesn't matter, Denver, Boston, unless they have a draw to Western New York, some kind of a personal draw, they're likely not to come. They'll go through the whole interview, and at the end of it, they'll say, oh, it's in Buffalo. Oh, I'm not coming to Buffalo. This is after we've already brought them here and we've showed them the facilities. And because, the notion is that Buffalo just snows the whole time. Now, of course, now that we have a winning football team, that's going to change. But So there's this. People just have this image of Buffalo, and it's not always a positive one, because the only time we're in the news is when we got a big snow dump. But if people are either from here or they know about Buffalo, they have a connection, they're very willing to come. And then you take advantage of that and give them great opportunities. So,
well, as you mentioned, you yourself are someone that lived across the world and relocated to Western New York for a job opportunity without that, personal connection. You're not doing the direct hiring and pitching to these folks, but if you were, what would your kind of sales pitch be to someone that doesn't have a connection, maybe beyond a playoff run from the Bills, as someone that lived around the world with stints in, Ireland and Germany is now here? What's your elevator pitch to someone?
Yeah, I would say whatever preconceived notions you have of Buffalo, they're probably wrong. Actually, where we have had real success is in bringing people from abroad who don't have the US, haven't grown up around the US, and have this notion of, oh, Buffalo, it's always snowing, it's always cold. Buffalo's not a good place to be. Buffalo's a dying city, Midwestern city. We've got folks from the UK who've come here. We've got folks from Germany that have come here, lots of different parts of the world, and they're actually excited to come here. And so they don't have that notion. But if you grew up in the US, Detroit is another great example. Folks say, oh my God, you're not going to go to Detroit. And then, of course, there are wonderful parts of Detroit, and there's great places in Buffalo. And my pitch would be, first of all, don't believe everything that you've heard. Second, it is a wonderful place to have a family, bring up children. There's good schools. It's a big enough city that you have access to galleries and theaters and sports and, all of those things that a bigger city will offer you. But it's a small enough city that you do not have the traffic and the commute. So you can pick wherever you'd like to live around Buffalo, North Towns, South Towns, wherever you'd like to live. And you'd still be only 20 minutes to 30 minutes from work, no matter where you live. 1 or 2 days a year, there's going to be a snowstorm. But by the way, the forecast is incredibly accurate, and they're incredibly well set up to deal with a snowstorm. So if it happens, you'll be good. You'll still be able to drive to work at 7 or 8 o'clock because they'll have cleared the roads. So you've got good schools, and it's very affordable. If you're living in San Francisco, you're going to be living in a small apartment and, with 1,000 square feet. You can come to Buffalo, and for the same money, you can have a 2,500 square foot house in suburbia with a yard. Or if you want, you can go buy a farm with 50 acres, a couple of miles outside of, of the country. And so you have all this opportunity, and your kids, it's safe. It's, as I say, it's a great place to raise children. And it has the advantages of a city without the disadvantages of a huge city. So that would be my pitch. And then, of course, I would also pitch the fact that if you're coming to our company, at least, hopefully what you're going to do is going to be world-class work. This is not come to Buffalo, second city, so that you're going to be doing second-class work. What we do, we are the world leader in the stuff we do. We put people on the moon. We've been a part of landers on Mars. I mean, all the airplanes you fly in have our stuff that controls the flight controls, the actuation. What we do is world leading. And so you, as an engineer, you've got this world leading opportunity in a city that's got the advantages of a city, but not the disadvantages of a huge city. So I guess that's the pitch I would make. But the first thing is you got to get that notion that you have in your head out of your head. That's not true. And come and visit, come see us. In the summer, of course, we only bring people in the summer, but come visit us, see what it's like. Let's show you the schools. Let's show you the housing. Let's show you what it's like to be here. And then try to keep an open mind, and then maybe you'll decide.
Yeah, you talk about that perception that people have of Buffalo, and I think, that can be true within our industry as well. People think of Buffalo as a Rust Belt, manufacturing city. And I think in a lot of ways, Moog is at least an anecdote counter to that argument. You're an advanced manufacturing company, but, we talked before I hit record about my visit around your campus. You talked about the culture and the amount of engineering and mid and high skilled employees that you have. As a business leader in Western New York, as a leader in advanced manufacturing, a member of our board, trying to attract new companies, what types of companies and within what industries do you think should be moving to Buffalo, taking advantage of these, unique benefits that we might have and could succeed?
So to answer that, Craig, let me go back to what happened in Ireland, which is where I'm from, and what they did in terms of trying to attract investment and companies. And there are some parallels with Buffalo. Ireland in total is about 4 or 5 million people. Buffalo is maybe 1 million plus. So even in terms of scale, it's Western New York is probably as big as Ireland in terms of the scale. And way back in the 70s, when I was growing up in the 60s and the 70s, it was a very rural, it was quite a poor area. And so the government invested a lot of money in trying to attract companies in, and they wanted to attract manufacturing jobs. There was a kind of a pitch that we're relatively in Europe, low-cost manufacturing. And they offered tremendous tax advantages. They would give a decade of no taxes. And what happened was they were succeeded. They actually also built factories. They literally built empty buildings so that when you came, it wasn't a shovel-ready site. It was, you can move into this building. All you have to do is arrive. But what happened was that companies came, they put in manufacturing, various types, semiconductor manufacturing, lots of stuff, spent the 10 years, and then they left as soon as the tax thing broke down. The only companies that stayed were the ones that also invested in local intellectual property, be it product development or process development or some sets of capabilities. And after the 70s and 80s that the country learned that lesson, they really shifted to, we want to bring in high-tech industry where we're not just doing the manufacturing, we're doing the research, we're doing the development, we're doing the next generation of stuff. So that when people think of, well, could I pick up my factory and move it somewhere else because I can get, a buck an hour cheaper rate? Turns out, no, we can't move this engineering team. We can't. Look at how much capability we have there. And the poster child for that is a company called Analog Devices, which is a US company, which set up in Ireland in 1975. And is still there because they had a development team. They hired local talent. And Ireland, very much like Buffalo, there's a lot of people that want to stay in Ireland, and every place has good talent if you can just, cultivate it. And they stayed, and they've continued to stay and continue to grow and continue to flourish. And in the meantime, dozens of companies have come and gone. So I think for Buffalo, it's the same story. You really want that intellectual property anchor that says, this is what's going to keep us here, because we've got such talent. And as we talked about, the talent here is relatively inexpensive by comparison with somewhere else. And one of the interesting things that we've learned, Greg, at Moog, even in the last couple of years, is we've started to get involved in new areas, new innovation areas, kind of leading some areas that we've not done before around autonomy and electric vehicles. And so we've been looking to partner in this kind of new ecosystem with other companies. And so we partnered with a small company, a startup out in Silicon Valley, who were doing some stuff that we thought was really interesting. And what we learned over a year or two, we spent a little bit of money with them, and turned out it was more difficult to partner with them than we thought. And the work that they were doing, we decided, well, we kind of have to do that in parallel. And when we started, we thought that this is like the grass is greener. Well, we thought the talent is greener. These folks in Silicon Valley, look at their resumes. Oh my gosh, they've done all these wonderful things. They must be so much smarter than we are here in sleepy Buffalo. And because of the need to do it, our folks ended up doing something in parallel. We discovered, we can do that stuff too. It turns out we're actually pretty good too. Is there capabilities and skills that we don't necessarily have? Yeah, maybe, but actually we can learn that stuff too. And so that talent that you have in, locally is really important. And one of the real positives about Buffalo, again, a little bit like Ireland, is we had a wonderful education system, and Buffalo has so many wonderful universities, and therefore folks that have been here, so that myth of it just snows in Buffalo is perhaps not there. And you want to take advantage of that, provide industries, whether it's high-end manufacturing or it's pharmaceuticals or any of these industries that have a future, but you're using that local graduate talent and generating intellectual property. That to me is the key to long-term success.
Right. Yeah, I was on a panel webinar earlier today. They were talking about the future of cities, and the three kind of prerequisites that they said would determine which cities win and lose kind of these talent wars, and especially out of the pandemic and change towards remote work, was a good airport, a good research university, and a developed waterfront. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're speaking to kind of create that stickiness with companies, especially with the research universities and talent.
Yeah, absolutely. Because those folks already, most folks that go to UB think, yeah, this is a pretty good place. We've had folks that have gone to UB, come from India, done a master's or a PhD at UB, and then they've joined Moog, and then they've stayed with us because UB was their entry point. And UB has an incredible number of foreign students. So what you now have is you've got this pool of unbelievable talent. So it's not just Western New York talent or US talent, particularly as they get within the engineering ranks to the postgraduate degrees. They have an enormous number of folks from other countries. And so you have access to a pool that it's similar to the pool that you're going to get in Silicon Valley or in Boston or elsewhere. And so those are the folks that are perhaps interested in staying and could form the basis of an economy that's, has real longevity.
Over the last few months on this podcast, I've talked with a bunch of leaders, specifically in startups and entrepreneurship, that spoke to the advantages that they might have in the times of a pandemic, as far as their malleability and ability to, pivot quickly. How do you, as the leader of, this really, really large company, how have you been able to, pivot with the new times of COVID and kind of make the best out of a bad situation?
So let me tell you a story. So a year ago, on Friday, I think it was Friday the 13th of March. So it was almost a year ago. I was traveling back from a seminar that I was at in Chicago for a couple of days. And when I was at the seminar, folks were talking that quite a few people, particularly from the West Coast, hadn't turned up. Like 25% of the folks that were maybe supposed to be 100 folks there, and maybe 25 didn't turn up because of this pandemic. And we were hearing about this COVID thing, but I was doing it. People didn't come because of the pandemic. That seems a little odd. As I'm getting off the airplane and the return to Chicago, I'm in the line waiting for my bag, and I'm hearing the guy in front of me saying, "Yeah, we're not traveling anymore." And the guy behind me is saying, "Yeah, we shut everything down." And that's when it was like, "Oh, we gotta change gears here. We gotta change gears." And so we had meetings over the weekend at the management level. And on the Tuesday, it was the 17th of March, and if you're Irish, that's a very significant day because it's St. Patrick's Day. I had a video with all of the managers and supervisors around the world, 400 or 500 people. And I said, "Look, folks, this pandemic is upon us and we got to change. So we need everybody that can to work from home from Friday, Tuesday to Friday. That is, we probably 7,000 people need to start working from home by Friday." And that's what happened. Everybody learned how to do it at an incredible pace. Normally, Greg, if somebody said to me, "John, I want half of your workforce to start working from home, how long would that take you to organize?" I'd say, "Well, we better do a study, and then we're going to do a pilot, and then we're going to do a test site, and then we're going to refine it. Maybe 3 years if we're lucky, and we got to make sure the IT infrastructure works." But we did it in 3 days because we had to. We felt like, and we changed the the protection internally. We set 2 simple priorities. First and foremost, say health and safety of all our employees and their families. Number 1 priority. Nothing else came close. Second one, we got to continue to service our customers and keep the business going, because that's how we're going to continue to pay our folks so that they also are financially secure. But those were the 2 priorities, and they have stuck with us throughout the 9 months. So we pivoted in 3 days to send half our workforce home because out of need. And what's been really interesting is, I have the title of CEO, but what I've been doing and my senior staff is we're kind of setting direction and policy, but we're also saying, if you're in California or you're in China or you're in India or you're in, the Czech Republic, you got to take this guidance and then you got to turn that into what makes sense for you locally based on the local conditions, regulations, all of these things. And so leadership happens all the way down through the organization. And when you get down to that level, you have a really small group of folks who are responding to a challenge that they've been given, in this case, the COVID challenge. And they're making decisions quickly and effectively locally, while keeping in mind this broad policy. We're not traveling. We're not going to have visitors, but all those kind of make sense. And so you can act like a small company because at the level that you're making the tactical day-to-day decisions, it's groups of 10, 20, 30, 40 people. It's the same size as a startup. And I think that's what's happened. Actually, every big company has learned that they can turn on a dime in this whole COVID that none of us could have ever imagined. I could never have imagined it, Greg. So I think we did that. The advantage that we have over the startup is we also have tremendous momentum, and we have businesses across a diverse range of industries that have continued to operate. And so we can absorb a hit like this. And we've been lucky because 60% of our business has actually been stronger through the pandemic. We've had a couple of businesses. We're in the commercial aircraft business. We sell products to Boeing and Airbus. That's way down, over 50%. But we've got a big defense business that's actually up We got a space business that's up. We have a medical business that's up. So we have the advantage of size and momentum and over the startup, where if you're in that particular piece and if that falls apart, you're in big trouble. So there's advantages and disadvantages. Startups clearly can move extremely quickly, but I think in response to the pandemic, we moved very quickly.
Great. Well, really appreciate you being so gracious with your time and your commitment to Western New York. Before I let you go, we always end on a couple of hard-hitting Blizzard round questions. So I will start with, if you were a flavor of ice cream, what would you be?
Greg, I'm going to fail all of these. I'd be vanilla, Greg. There you go.
book or TV show that you'd recommend?
So this is politically correct, but if you want to watch a TV show, there's an Irish show called The Derry Girls. I don't know have you seen it, Greg?
I have not, no.
It's a series. There's two things. They're half-hour episodes. It's how people speak in Ireland, and it is very funny, but I take no responsibility. Do not show it to your children first. It's very funny. It's about girls in a Catholic high school in the north of Ireland during the troubled times when there was a lot of security there. But it's very funny. It's called The Derry, Derry Girls. Derry is a city in the north of Ireland.
Perfect. Text or phone call?
Text or phone call, in what respect?
Which would you prefer to receive?
Phone calls are always better because you talk to somebody directly as against a text.
Okay. What do you prefer, Bills or Sabres?
Given that I grew up playing both those sports and know so much about them, I guess I have more of an appreciation of the Bills. But my interest is that, success for the city. I think the city could do with a winning team. And it feels like, the Bills did really well this year. And so that's always exciting. The Sabres, because I never played hockey, it looks a little bit somewhat random to me, a little bit more random than the football side of it. It's just, and I know over time there's tremendous talent there, and it's an exciting game. It's an incredibly exciting game, hockey. But if you ask me, would you go to a Bills game or a hockey game, I'd probably take the Bills game first, assuming that they're winning.
Right. And that it's not too bad of weather.
That's right.
How about hiking or skiing?
I like both, but age means that skiing is more challenging than hiking. But I'd prefer, if I were, if I had the option and I was a younger man like you, Greg, I'd be preferring skiing.
And last question, most important, buffalo chicken wings, drumstick or flat?
The flat one is the one with no, I don't like the drumsticks. It's the other one I prefer.
Okay, flat.
Medium, please.
Medium, that's my pick too. Thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Great, thank you for your time too. I enjoyed it.
Bellringer is a podcast by Invest Buffalo Niagara, the region's privately funded, nonprofit marketing and economic development organization. Please rate this podcast, follow our social media channels, and read our blog at buffaloniagara.org for the best of Buffalo Niagara. Come grow your business with us.